What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Week 8 and Episode 8 of the Fantasy Cheat Sheet Podcast. If you've caught the show before, welcome back in. But if you're new to the show, we are the show that counts down the 10 things you need to know heading into the games this Sunday. Reminder, we are a member of the Going for Two Live podcast network. You can check us out on Twitter every Friday night at 8:30 on @GoingForTwoLive, or head on over to the YouTube page for Going for Two Live. Subscribe there. Never miss our show and all the other shows there. So remember, check us out every Friday night. I'm your host, Jay Christensen. You can find me on Twitter at JAYC_DFF. And I am joined, as always, by my two co-hosts. First, you can find him at Drop the Mic FF, Mike Hicks. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Pretty good, Jay. Just ready to get this Week 8 going and some more football, baby. Let's do this.
Yeah, Week 8 rolling along here. If my other co-host, introduce him. You can find him on Twitter at EV_RITT3. It's Evan Ritter. Happy Halloween, Evan. And what's going on?
What's going on, fellas? Happy Halloween. Definitely going to be dressing up as a vampire tomorrow, taking the kids out. Well, tomorrow and Sunday, actually.
All right, whole weekend.
Yeah, that'll be a fun time. But yeah, no, like always, happy to be here, guys. I can't believe we're already at freaking Week 8, man.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, I wait for football season all year round. It's my favorite sport as far as fantasy, DFS, to cover, the whole 9 yards. But here we are, Week 8 already. It just goes by too fast. But luckily we get an extra week this year. You know what I mean? So let's go ahead and jump into it.
It's not halfway through quite yet. It's
true. That's
kind
true.
of halfway through. It'll be eventually. We will be Halloween really falling on a great spot this year. Really interfering with football watching this weekend. Got Pats Chargers at 4. I'm gonna have to go trick or treating partway through. So checking in on the score. Just trying to pay attention to the kids in the street and while checking the scores of the game and things like that. So a challenge for all the dads out there with kids having to do trick-or-treating. Really, they should, I don't know. They've got to work that out when it falls on a Sunday. Figure something out. Make it Saturday. I don't know. Do something.
It's not like NBA. It's not like NBA for Christmas where we're all just hanging around, the living room and stuff.
Inside of Thanksgiving, it's perfect. Halloween, not so much. It's kind of tough.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah, we'll get by. We'll get through it. Feel free during the show. I think we've already got some action in the chat, which is good, but hit us up with some questions. We try to get to as many of those questions as possible. Sometimes we like to hook them in with some of the topics we're getting to in our top 10 countdown. But as we go along, we will try to get to those comments and questions. So hit us up there in the chat. Last night, we kicked off Week 8. We had Thursday Night Football. As always with this show, we try to do a little recap there, give you some takeaways from the game. This was the good game. Packers, Cardinals, two of the better teams in the NFC. We saw the Packers take down the Cardinals last night. No more undefeated team. The Cardinals lose their first game. Packers win 24-21. The game ends on a wild play where AJ Green stops running his route and Kyler Murray throws an interception as I don't know what Green was doing there. It just Green Bay cornerback intercepts it, game over. They basically could have tied the game there with a field goal, sent it to overtime, or won with the touchdown. But Green Bay prevails even without Devontae Adams. Guys, let's throw it around the horn here. We'll start with you, Evan. Give me some takeaways from this game, anything we learned or any injuries you want to touch on.
So as you guys know, I am a betting man. I like to bet on these games, especially these these island games. It's the only one we have. So I stayed away from it last night, unfortunately, because I'm kind of upset with myself from a betting standpoint. I mean, I think this was an obvious letdown spot for the Cardinals. And the Packers were, a legit 32-7, now 33-7 in regular season games since 2019. I mean, they just find ways to win in the regular season. But once Adams was out, I kind of backed off. I mean, you can't really blame me. Adams himself is worth probably, 3 points in my opinion alone against the spread. Then you add in the absence of Allen Lazard, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay away because at no point was I going to bet the Cardinals. I just think this was an obvious letdown spot. I was on the Pack all the way, but I couldn't pull the trigger, with the pass catchers Rodgers was going to have available last night. So I obviously wish I could have stuck to my gut because Rodgers did what Rodgers does and, came away with a huge win and is actually now 7-0 in games he doesn't have Devontae Adams, which is impressive in its own right. Yeah.
I saw that today. I was like, what?
I don't know how he does that, but yeah. Anyway, wish I could have stuck with my gut. But some other takeaways. Aj Dillon also looked good running the ball. I definitely expected him to get some more touches in that running game because I expected with the depleted receiver core the Packers were putting out there, they would go to more RB heavy sets, motion Aaron Jones out, but Dillon was actually productive with the touches he got and even more carries than I had projected for. So not sure I like that going forward for Jones's stock, even though Aaron Jones, makes the best of, his touches anytime he touches the rock. I guess my last main takeaway would be the obvious what the hell moment that Jay already alluded to with AJ Green not being prepared, running a route, never getting his head around. New team or not, there's just no excuse for everyone not to know what their job was. I believe they had a timeout before that play ran, so I don't understand where all the confusion came. Whole play was just mind-boggling to me. And then last but not least, there was Murray, who looked to be limping towards the end of that game. I haven't really saw any reports or updates, but we saw when he was banged up last year how negatively that affected his play. So it's obviously a huge concern for fantasy managers, but obviously an even bigger concern for the Cardinals organization. Not to be Captain Obvious here, but this team only goes as far as Murray will take them. So, definitely something you need to keep an eye on. I don't know if you guys have had any updates. But yeah, how about you guys? What were your thoughts on last night's game? Because definitely a good one and lots of storylines that came out of it.
Yeah, in the comments there, Murray actually left on a walking boot.
Yeah.
But what I read also, it didn't seem like they were making it out to be serious, but he did leave in a walking boot, which is concerning. He was limping around there, so it's like something to monitor, but hopefully nothing serious. Mike, what do you got for a takeaway here from this game?
Well, I have to look at Jeff Lambert's comment in the chat. He just said AJ Green retired.
I love that shot. I saw that one flying around.
That one's hilarious. But the takeaway, obviously Green Bay defense stepped up, but a takeaway that I want to bring up about Arizona, and it's partly because I just want to admit that I was wrong. James Conner is showing up, and he's showing that he's for real. He's not getting as much opportunity because it's so close to a 50-50 split, but he got in the end zone twice, right? I think he got in the end zone twice.
Yep.
He's showing that he can be a productive running back when he gets the ball, and I'm glad for the player, but I will have to admit I was completely wrong. And the only thing I want to add about Green Bay is I am bummed that Robert Tonyan's out. He tore his ACL, and that just means another weapon to that team. So I heard someone say this morning on Twitter that could they trade for a tight end that is going to be out there, or are they just going to run with Mercedes Lewis? So we'll see what happens, because we do know that this team is, even though they won last night, that game meant more for Arizona, in my opinion, because Green Bay didn't need to beat this team in October. They need to beat this team in January. So they need to get their players healthy and ready for the playoff run.
Yeah, James Conner to go 5 carries with two touchdowns on 5 carries. He's really been the guy they give it too close there.
Yep.
Unfortunately, they sort of cap each other from being superstars, I guess, in a way. I don't know if either are capable of doing that, but really they kind of take PPR, Edmonds, Connor's getting the goal line work. Edmonds did score in this game as well, so they sort of, you put them together, it's like, wow.
Great running back as a whole, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you get, but they're playable, obviously. You need the touchdowns from Conner, obviously, to get any fantasy value from that. Injuries, yeah, you mentioned the Tonyan one, so it'll be interesting what they do there. They have like Josiah DeGuara. He kind of looked lost out there today. So they might be in a little bit of trouble there. Also, Kylon Hill, who is a nice-looking rookie, probably not going to play too much this year with Dillon. And Jones, he goes out with an ACL too on a horrific looking play where the other, I forget his name now, had a neck injury, carted off. I didn't catch any updates on that, but that was just not a great play overall. The only other takeaways I had from this game was Hopkins was kind of funny, like not funny for fantasy, but like his hamstring, which he was questionable going in. But he clearly was precautionary. But when they got desperate, they would run him out there. It was kind of funny. I was like, "Oh, Hopkins is back in!" Like,
did you hear?
Try to win the game?
No, did you hear what Kingsbury said about that?
I know, I did.
He said that was Hopkins walking away from the coaches and doing that himself.
He seemed like he was trying to. He would put on his helmet on like by himself, and it looked like he was trying to run. He was talking to a doctor. Yeah. It was almost like he was trying to plead his case. Like I could play, I'm fine. But it was
speaking of Hopkins, and then like to Jeff's comment, how he said that AJ Green retired mid play. Did you see what Hopkins did mid play on that first catch he had? He literally put a double move while the ball was in the air. That I've never seen that. That was insane, man. I went back and watched that play 100 times. It was so cool.
Yeah, that was great. And it was Jonathan Ward. Thanks, Kyle, for that. Best wishes to him. Hopefully he has a recovery there from that injury. That was just not a great play. Chandler with the comment here, Falcons shopping Hayden Hurst. If they're shopping Hayden Hurst, that would be a real good fit, I would say, for pretty good tight end for Packers to look at. So that would be a very interesting move there for sure. So that about wraps it up for Thursday night. Interesting game. Definitely two teams I think we'll be hearing obviously a lot from in that top heavy NFC where you have a bunch of teams at the top there with very, very good records. So we'll see what happens there. Let me get to Chandler's original question in the chat. Before we jump into our top 10, he's looking to add Carson Wentz since Brady is on bye next week. Should he drop Latavius Murray or Devontae Parker? I have no problem with dropping. I would probably drop Parker over Murray just because running backs, you never know.
Yep.
But ultimately, if you need to win and you need a quarterback, I don't mind Wentz. He's playing pretty well. I'd have to check out the matchups and things like that and make sure that's good, but I have no problem with that. You guys differ on that, or are you guys good with that play?
No, I'm good with Wentz. I'm moving forward. Wentz is playing good right now. I'm definitely for dropping Parker to pick up Wentz.
He's got Waddle too, even.
Yeah, if you have my man Jalen Waddle, get rid of Parker.
Yes,
Mr.
Sir.
Waddle. Mr. Jalen Waddle.
Parker probably playing with he's still questionable, I think, but like he's another guy who's had injury problems this year so far. So don't have any problem there. So let's get into our top 10 though, and we'll once again keep putting some questions in the chat. We will jump back and forth and try to get to as many as we can. Let's kick it off though. Top 10 things that you need to know going into this week. We're going to give it to you, Evan. Give us our first topic for week 8.
So this one hurts. As you guys know by now, I'm a big Cowboys fan. But unfortunately, when it comes to these, fantasy football betting, you kind of just you can't be biased, man. You gotta just look at the numbers, look at what the numbers tell you, and go with it. So I think Kirk Cousins is a clear start this week against my Cowboys, and I think we're going, to see Cousins and these receivers have a big game. To start the season, Cousins was on fire. He was a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Now he's since kind of cooled off. But I think this Vikings offense matches up really well against the Cowboys defense, especially through the air. The Cowboys run man coverage 41.7% of the time, which is the 3rd highest rate in the league. And it just so happens that Cousins and his pass catchers have absolutely destroyed man coverage this season, especially Justin Jefferson, who has come up with an explosive play against man 9.5% of the time. We know Diggs is playing out of his mind right now. No one's going to argue that. But he also had, before the bye week, had a banged up ankle. So how well he's been able to recover from that, and is he at 100%? Well, we'll soon find out. But either way, 100% or not, Diggs cannot cover both of these receivers, especially with the threat of Dalvin Cook, who will set up the play action, which we know Cousins is also very efficient at. So I hate to say it, but I really don't think this Cowboys defense is as good as they may seem either. When you really peel back the layers, yeah, they've been getting a ton of turnovers and they look leaps and bounds better than they did last year. But I think their real identity will show once those turnovers start to dry up. And it's a guarantee they will begin to. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind they will dry up at some point. And I don't know if that bye was, while it's a good thing for Dak to get the calf healthy and so forth, but they were on fire, man. Sometimes the bye week kind of puts a stunt in your momentum. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping the defense can come out and still roll. But I do think at some point we're going to see, or I know at some point we're going to see these turnovers dry up. And it may start, in week 8. So, yeah, I mean, bottom line is I just think this Vikings team matches up really well against the Cowboys defense specifically. There's going to be a lot of points on both sides of the ball. I mean, this Vegas has this as the largest total on the slate at 54.5. But unfortunately, I think this is a huge letdown spot for my Cowboys all around. I think it's going to be a lot of scoring, close game. The Vikings will be in it, and they potentially could pull out a win. So I'm going to be betting the Vikings spread. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but when it comes to, like I said earlier, when it comes to this, you can't be biased. And I don't bet teams, I bet numbers. So I'm going to have some money on the Vikings as well.
Yes, it's a nice matchup for fantasy. Two teams with lots of fantasy players Sunday night, so that'll be a good one. A lot of fantasy matchups kind of riding in from the Sunday afternoon games into the night game where a lot of things can change. So I like that. But yeah, going back to their game before the bye was you saw Mac Jones play very well against that defense. And they are kind of predicated on kind of a little bit of risky digs that they take chances for those turnovers.
Absolutely.
Sometimes those chances can go the other way. And this is definitely a team with those receivers that could exploit that. So I like that and like those points there. Any other thoughts on this game, Mike?
No, I mean, everything's been hit. I think this is going to be a big game for all the weapons on the team on both sides of the ball. And I think, like you said, high scoring. And if you like offense, hopefully this is the game we get that on the Sunday night game.
Great DFS matchup.
Yeah.
And especially because it is going to be a showdown too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because it's on its own. It's on its island. So
yep. So it'll get that. Before we get to we're going to get to your topic here, number 2, Mike. Give me your thoughts on this one because it has your boy in it. So Jalen Waddle, your guy, who wins this trade? Chris Godwin, Damian Harris, and Jalen Waddle. So that's one side gets that for Deontay Johnson and Darrell Henderson. Which side would you take in this spot here?
Man, that's a close trade. I'm
going Deontay Johnson and Darrell Henderson because of the running back.
Well, you're gonna turn on your guy there. You're not gonna take Waddle on that side.
Running back. We all know running back is a tough position this year. I mean, everyone's getting hurt. And Darrell Henderson's actually performing more than some people thought he was going to perform, but he's actually performing at a top level and he's been healthy. You got to take that. And Deontay Johnson ain't no fluke either,
Right.
So, I mean, you got to take, even though I would rather have Godwin and Waddle over Deontay with Darrell Henderson is the main reason.
Right. I like those thoughts. I think if I was building for the future, if this was a dynasty situation, I think I'd go with the Godwin Waddle side just for getting the 2 young play. I think Henderson and Harris washed a little bit because I don't know how long term I guess either guy is. I guess I could see a little bit of wash there.
I read it as redraft, but if it is dynasty, I agree.
I might lean the other side because I feel like I have 2 proven. Although Damian Harris has been really good, underrated. He's a little bit more game script dependent though. If they on games Patriots run the ball, that's when he really produces. So they're really tight trade there. So but I say if I'm building for the future, I might lean the Godwin Waddle side. But let's jump it. Evan, do you have any thoughts there quick?
Just real quick. Yeah. Chris Godwin, I think, is a good trade target right now because I think he's really going to eat with Antonio Brown out.
That's true too. Because that I like that situation with those two receivers. If you have those 2 receivers, that might the targets could go their way. So let's get to your second topic there, Mike, and take it away.
All right. So the other rookie wide receiver from Alabama, Devonta Smith, going against the greatest disastrous secondary in the NFL, the Lions. I mean, the Lions are averaging. They're allowing 11 yards per pass attempt, which is 32nd in the league. 27% of the pass attempts result in catches of 15 yards or more. So a quarter of the passes that are completed against the Lions are going for over 15 yards, which is obviously worst in the NFL. He has a 91% snap share. The thing that got me was he is 9th in the league in team percentage of air yards with 38.2% of the Eagles' air yards. He's 23% target share. He's got a 13.2 yards distance of target. He has 1 top 12 performance, 2 top 24 performances, and he has 4 top 36 performances. Devonta Smith, to me this week, is a top 20 to 24. He's an 18 to 22 top receiver this week.
We kind of been waiting for a big Smith game.
Yes.
It just seems like it hasn't totally come to fruition. A little bit snake bitten with some penalties on good plays from him. I could recall, I think at least twice, him scoring touchdowns and having
he's had 2
a
touchdowns.
flag come.
He's had 2 touchdowns and 3 first downs brought back from penalties.
Yeah, it just seems like every time he makes a play, there's a yellow flag on the field. The other thing is he's got a 20, he's the most targeted guy on that team, 24% target share, essentially.
Yeah.
And they're down at pass catcher, with Ertz, obviously. So, which thins out, instead of Goddard and Ertz competing for other targets, you're really just competing with Goddard and then the other wide receivers. So I definitely, against that secondary this week, definitely like some Devonte Smith. What about you, Evan? You taking Devonte Smith this week?
Yeah, I don't mind Devonte Smith. I've been so big on Devonte Smith. I just want that big game. So come on, bring it on against this line secondary, because I've been touting for Smith to have a blow up game all year. And it's just like you said, it's just not coming. And he's finished as the wide receiver 70 or worse 3 times this season. It's just like, on that team with the target share he's getting, that shouldn't be a thing. That should not be a thing. He's too talented, and he's getting a big target share. But Jalen Hurts just needs to, give him add more value to those targets. You know what I mean? He's just not taking that step forward passing that I wish he would, and it sucks for Devonte Smith because he's a superstar in the making. But yeah, against this line secondary, hopefully it's a get right game for the Eagles all around.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And Hurts, certainly you could lay some of the blame there. You could lay some of the blame with just offensive play calling in general on that team, which has been sort of a mess. This would be a week to really kind of take, really judge that team against a nice matchup. I would like to see how they do this week and then maybe judge them a little bit more harshly next week. This would be a good get right week for that team. Let's jump on over to another question here. Staying in the wide receiver realm, Kyle brings up a good one with Smith. Devonta Smith or Michael Pittman? Evan, you love Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I'm
on
Michael.
What are you going to do there? If you're down on Devonta Smith a little bit, would you go with Michael Pittman over him?
Yeah, I think I'm on Pittman this week just because, like I said, it's the upside just hasn't been there with Smith like it should be yet. But we're seeing kind of Pittman and Wentz, for that matter, kind of right the ship these last few weeks and look good. So I think I would take, with how he's playing right now, I think I would take Pittman in that, against Smith.
No, I like Pittman. I'm going Smith. I'm right. I like that matchup. I'm going to ride Smith, but Pittman's been playing well. I think Hilton might be back this week again, so it could be a little bit more going around there. So that would give me a little bit of pause, but Pittman's been really good. I will give him that, and that's not a bad decision to have to make, I don't think, this week. So let's get to number 3, though. Let's roll it along here. This is my topic, and I'm talking about Denver here a little bit. Their receiving situation. You've got a good matchup this week against the defense we've talked about on this team before, Washington. Denver's pass catchers will be going against a team that's given up the second most points allowed to wide receivers 11 TDs. They've given up 5 wide receiver 1 performances and 4 wide receiver 2 performances, and they've given up those 11 TDs. It's tied for second most in the league in terms of TDs. 2 wide receivers. The question is, which wide receivers are we getting this week? Jerry Judy, rumored to potentially be back, sits out practice today, but it was deemed rest. But concerning that you're out of Friday practice before a comeback game, so something to monitor. But you're looking at it if you have rostered Judy on your team in terms of getting him back in your lineup, which I totally would if he plays. But the interesting guy to look at is Sutton, who has really, since Judy's been out, he was only there week 1. But man, he's crushed the target share since then. With Judy out, he's had 26% target share since that time, and has, despite a couple of down games where he had around 8 and 7 fantasy points, he's really crushed it with 25-point performances, 23-point performances. It's really been the really the alpha on that team in terms of the guy who's getting all the targets. He's the only one really making plays outside of, maybe some of the running backs, honestly, it's been a little bit inconsistent with Teddy B out there in terms of the passing and, in terms of how good those passes are and the value in the situations that Sutton gets into. So the only thing that'll be interesting is if Judy's back, what does that do to Sutton? Does the target share come down? Does it affect things at all? Has he established himself as the guy on that team? That is something I will be paying attention to next week if they both play. If Judy's out, I really like Sutton this week versus Washington. I'm still playing them both if Judy's in. I really like Judy, but I will be checking that target share, all those stats, just to see, how they coexist in an offense where Teddy B can support multiple options. It's just where the ceiling goes, which I'm afraid it might lower a little bit, or maybe Judy establishes himself as the guy for Teddy B. So I'll be definitely paying attention to that, but really nice matchup. I'd like a bounce back for Bridgewater this week, but this is another situation kind of similar to that Hurts situation where this is a judgment game. You're playing a defense you can exploit. I want to see some things on offense from that Denver team this week. So thoughts there on that matchup in general, the pass catchers, and which guy, if you had to choose, if Judy's in that game, do you favor one over the other? I'll throw it to you, Mike, first.
So when it comes to these two, I'm still picking Cortland Sutton for this week, but because I just want to see what Judy can do. But I am trying to buy Judy in the league right now. I'm actually in negotiations right now for Judy. And for rest of season, if Judy can come back, I was all in on Judy at the beginning of the season. And even though he got hurt, there was nothing that happened for me to jump off the bandwagon of Judy.
Yeah, I like Judy. I think he's a good guy to acquire too. Evan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this matchup is wonderful. The WFT is giving up 32.3 total points to receivers, the worst in the league this year. To fantasy receivers, the worst in the league this year. So definitely a good matchup. But I think this week at least I'm going to try to take the wait and see approach on Judy, just see how he looks coming off the injury, looking how these targets are dispersed, because I'm not sold on Teddy Bridgewater being able to support 2 stud receivers. And we see with Judy out, that's what Cortland Sutton's been. I mean, right now he's wide receiver 12, I think it is on the year. He's been a freaking monster getting, all the volume that he's getting. But with Judy coming back, we saw Judy and Bridgewater kind of have that rapport. I mean, Judy looked like he was in for a huge year. So I think Judy's going to be the receiver I want moving forward. But like I said, I'm going to take the wait and see approach on both of them this week just to see how these targets are dispersed. And that's only because of the quarterback they're attached to.
Yeah, Teddy B is definitely a question mark there for sure. Let's keep it rolling, though. Let me go to one more question here I saw in the chat. This is another trade question. Trade Murray, so Kyler Murray, D-Hop, Monty, and Julio. This is a big trade. So yeah, Kyler, D-Hop, stack, David Montgomery, and Julio for Josh Allen, CeeDee Lamb, and Hunt. Man, that is a wild trade. So that's, you're basically taking your Murray and Hopkins stack and turning that essentially into Josh Allen and Lamb. You've got Monty and Hunt, who are both quality backs, both hurt at this point. Julio also hurt. So, I mean, that plays into it. But really, you're kind of looking at the upside of like Josh Allen and Lamb. In the end, it almost turns into Lamb for D-Hop and Julio in a way. If you kind of wash the running backs, wash Murray and Allen to a degree. It kind of depends what you prefer there. I don't know. For me, I might take a swing at the Allen Lamb side just for some upside there. But what are your guys' thoughts here? This is a tight one. You probably don't need to do this move, but it's a lot of stars in this one.
Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, this is too tight for me. I don't know that I need to give up all this. And Josh Allen's the clear winner in that trade, and Lamb looks like to be the better receiver. But I think once you get Hop healthy, better days are ahead for Murray and him. I don't know that the Josh Allen side weighs, tips it enough for me to pull the trigger on it. Although Khalil Herbert has looked good, so does he eat into Monty coming back? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces to this
going
trade
on here.
Yeah, that needs to kind of be picked apart. I don't know that there's any one side that's a true winner or a loser. It kind of looks at how your roster construction is and what do you want to take a shot on. But I think there's definitely more upside on the Josh Allen Lamb Hunt side.
Yeah, that's the one I'm leaning just because I didn't see Josh Allen limp out of the building last night.
Exactly.
Or not play like Hop kind of. So with Lamb. So I maybe just right in the moment right now, I would just take that. But it's a lot of firepower in that trade for sure.
Damn,
So
right.
let's get to the next topic here. What do you got?
Oh, am I up? Yeah, I'm up, huh? All right. I am going to be going back to the well on with CJ Uzoma sitting at tight end 11 on the season. He doesn't get a large target share, but he's made up with touchdowns scored. He has 5 on the year. I call him basically the Gronkowski of that Bengals offense. He's also 12th in routes run at the position. He has a quarterback in Burrow who's throwing to him, who's been on absolute fire as of late. He's actually come in as the tight end 1 twice so far this season, which was against the Ravens and the Jaguars, who are both top 10 in points allowed to tight ends. And who does he get this week? Which is a huge reason that I'm going back to him, and I think fantasy managers can go back to him, is the Jets. He gets the Jets this week, who, by the way, are terrible. If you didn't know, they're a terrible defense all around, but they're also terrible at defending tight ends as well. So, yeah, if you scooped up CJ off the waiver wire, I think you can start him with confidence in week 8.
I like it. Yeah, he's on fire, and he's a tight end. So if he's a good tight end, you can play him. That's my motto: tight ends. If they're good, start them. Because there's not many good ones. So Uzoma scoring touchdowns all over the place. Mike, any thoughts on Uzoma? He's touchdown king.
Uzoma has been, touchdown king, and like Evan said, he's not getting a lot of targets. But I'll just be honest: anything that gets my boy Joe Burrow points, go for it. And if that's CJ Uzoma up the middle for a 50, 60-yard touchdown because CJ Uzoma knocks the defender down and runs into the end zones, well be it.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's getting it done. And Chase only helps other guy. I imagine that's going to open things up as you have to pay attention to the multitude of weapons that they have on that team. And Joe Mixon. It's going to be hard to, cover all of those different weapons. And good question here. Who isn't Mike's boy?
There's plenty of guys that are not my boy.
I don't know. It seems like everybody's your boy. I don't know.
No. Devonte Smith is not my boy. I just like the matchup because of
He is now.
No.
Mr. Waddle, on the other hand.
Mr. Waddle, on the other hand.
Yes.
Joe Burrow. Okay, Josh, the reason Joe Burrow is my boy this year is I have him in SFB with Jamar Chase in his stack. That's why.
There you go. Let's get to your number 5 here. Is this one of your boys that you want to tell us about?
No,
is this your
he's not.
guy?
I like him, but he's not one of my boys.
Okay. Explain why.
Terry McLaurin. I do believe that Terry McLaurin is quarterback proof, but when I was looking at some stats, I found something on Twitter that absolutely shocked me, and that is he has 33 contested targets this season. He has 40 catches, 69 targets, 29% target share. So that means Out of his 69 targets, a third of that has been contested. The second place in that statistical category is Michael Williams with 16. So he is double the amount of contested targets. He's 5th in targets in the league, 10th in catches. So 33% of his 33 contested targets, and he has 40 catches. So if he didn't have contested targets, I mean, I didn't get the actual percentage of how many of those were catches, but even if it's 10, 5 to 10, that could be 45 to 50 catches on the year, which would make his numbers higher. And that is with Heineke as his quarterback. We all know Heineke is not the greatest guy in the league. They are going against Denver. Denver could be a tough matchup in the secondary. I think this is going to be a close game, and I do think McLaurin could have a good game. I just wanted to bring up that stat because this is an absolute shock to me, and I think this proves how good of a wide receiver he really is.
Yeah, he just always seems to come down with he's had a couple this season, even last game in the end zone, where he just always seems to have to go up and get it over a cornerback or safety. It doesn't matter. He's had the misfortune, I'll say, of playing with a horrible list of quarterbacks for fantasy purposes. Yep. There are professional quarterbacks, and some of them had some success getting wins and things like that. However, man, not the greatest. He might have the worst run of quarterbacks for fantasy purposes of any other wide receiver in the league. Maybe him and Allen Robinson are the two that you come to mind. DJ Moore hasn't had a good run either, but man, it's a guy that, with a different situation, could it be higher? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about, but man, yeah, he definitely always seems to be able to come down with some tough catches in games, which will keep you going. And he's found the end zone a bit this year to reward fantasy managers out there. Evan, any thoughts on Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a beast. He has a team high 69 targets. No other receiver on that team has more than 26. I mean, he's getting all the love from Heineke, and we know Heineke's just kind of like a YOLO ball type quarterback. I mean, when he's in trouble, he's going to throw it up. He doesn't care. He's going to throw it up, and he's going to look for McLaurin because, to your guys' point, McLaurin's going to most likely come down with it. But it kind of goes back to my point with Devonta Smith is while they're getting a huge target share, and I think it's something as fantasy players we kind of need to dig more into, at least I'm trying to personally, is while target share is an awesome stat to look at, I'm trying to look more into quality of targets. Yes. Because that's really important, I think. And with how good McLaurin is, if he could get a decent quarterback who could give him the same target share but a hell of a lot better quality of targets, oh my gosh, I mean, he would be unbelievable. Not that he isn't already, but yeah, I just think that's something I'm moving forward. I'm trying to pay a little more attention to. But yeah, this week he's still a wide receiver 2 for me with upside easily.
Yep, Kyle sums it up nice. McLaurin doing nice this year.
Yeah, hashtag good at football.
Yep, hashtag good at football.
My brother Andrew Hopkins pre-Watson could have brought that. He had a Tom Savage era. That was fun with Hopkins, and he crushed even back then with some bad quarterbacks. So similar things going on with McLaurin getting it done despite an interesting situation there. Let's get to my topic here, and then I'll get to some other stuff in the chat. I'm going to talk about some situations. I'll have you compare two guys that have one's coming off an injury and one has an injury but keeps playing but has struggled a bit in terms of how much he's been on the field. I'm talking about Nick Chubb coming off an injury, and then Gibson, the guy who is playing with an injury but hasn't necessarily produced. And I want to talk about who you're more comfortable with playing this week. Nick Chubb coming back off the injury. He was taken off the injury report today, so he should be good to go versus Pittsburgh this weekend. Pittsburgh, a little bit of a dicey team to start running backs against this year. 4th least points given up to opposing running backs for fantasy. In addition, they've only given up one rushing touchdown, and they haven't given up a top 12 rushing performance in fantasy the entire season, only giving up a couple top 24s. So this is a tough defense against the run this year. The other things I would be worried about a little bit there in terms of what, my expectations for Chubb this week would be that Dearness Johnson, they say he's earned a role. Like, Kareem Hunt got a lot of work. Kareem Hunt is hurt. I think Dearness Johnson will get some run this weekend, and maybe a little bit of Demetric Felton sprinkled in, very, very minimally. But I don't know if Chubb immediately gets a full workload right away, just because he's coming off of an injury, calf injury. You don't want that to reoccur, and for him to miss more time against a tough defense, and that potentially his workload being down, it makes it a little bit less of an enticing start as normally you're thinking about with Nick Chubb. The other guy I'm bringing up here, Gibson, is a guy who has basically flip-flopped in terms of snap share with McKissick the last 2 weeks. You've seen it go from, Gibson around the 60s, 55% snap share to all of a sudden last 2 weeks he's down in close to 40% or under, while McKissick's getting most of the run. That can be due to that shin injury, or just the situations they're getting into in game script where it's more passing, hurry up type of things, where they're going to play the guy that they trust more in the passing situations. But man, for a guy that I really liked coming into this year, it has not been going good, and he's been banged up. So it's another guy that's still week to week. If I'm starting him, I'm not feeling super great about it. So for this week, my simple question is, who do you like better, Chubb or Gibson? I'll throw that to you, Mike, first. Out of those two guys, do you like any of them? Are you excited about these matchups, and who'd you prefer?
So I'm not excited this week about either one just because of matchups. Matchup with Chubb and situation injury-wise with Gibson. But to me, just like we all say in just fantasy football in general when it comes to running back, volume is king. So if I had to pick one, I'm taking Chubb because I still think he's going to get the workload. If he's off, he's not even listed as questionable anymore. He's off the injury list. Yes, Dearness Johnson probably will have part of a role, but that is also because Hunt is out. So I would still take Chubb, but don't expect him to get a full workload. But a 75 to 80% workload for Chubb is probably going to be more snap share than Gibson is going to get.
Evan, you with Chubb this week, or
so
swing at Gibson?
I like the matchup for Gibson a little bit better because it looks like the Broncos are starting to become like a slumping run defense, especially in week 5 against Najee Harris. I mean, Najee Harris ran all over him. And then Kenyon Drake in week 6, Dearness Johnson in week 7. I mean, they're definitely a slumping run defense. But the injury just scares me. I mean, he played 30 snaps Gibson did last week, I believe, when I looked at it, somewhere around there. He didn't look to be too banged up. He was getting the work. But he just hasn't looked himself. He hasn't topped 70 rushing yards in a game since week 1. So I think I'm going to take not my chances because it's Nick freaking Chubb. So I'm going to go with Chubb because Kareem Hunt is out. And I think we will see Dearness Johnson after coming off a good game, definitely have a role and try to keep Chubb fresh. But I think this Browns team needs a freaking win. And we don't know if Baker's going to play. We don't know if it's going to be Baker or Case. If Baker does play, how healthy is he? If Nick Chubb is good to go, I think they're going to lean on him as much as they possibly can, even in a bad matchup. Not necessarily a bad matchup, but a good matchup. The Steelers, like you alluded to, the Steelers' run defense is good, but it's still Nick Chubb, so I'm going to take my shots with Chubb.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'd go Chubb as well. Let's move it along. Let's get to a couple of things in the comments here. Got this question here. I'm not a huge fan of team defenses. I like to avoid those in my leagues as much as I can, but this is a defense question. Bears, Vikings, Chargers, or Seahawks this week? Who do you cut? I'm taking the Bears defense here because they're playing San Fran, and that could be Garoppolo or maybe Lance, so I'll take that. Seahawks also face Jacksonville, which maybe that's okay. The other two I don't love, so I think that's the Bears out of those defenses. But like I said, not the biggest fan of team defenses. You guys take the Bears this week? I think they're probably the best play.
Yeah, the only other one I would take a shot on is maybe the Chargers on the off chance that Mac Jones has an off game. But I would either go with the Bears or the Chargers. Most likely the Bears. I'm definitely not playing the Vikings against the stout Cowboys offense.
No, God, no.
And I'm
Unless
not
it's Cooper Rush for some reason.
Yeah, and I'm not playing the Seahawks defense, who can just give up. Their secondary is just awful defense all around. So yeah, I'd take my shots with the Bears, maybe the Chargers.
Yeah, I like the Bears. One other question here. Quick one. Trade Cole Beasley and Myles Gaskin for T. Higgins. I love T. Higgins, so I don't know if I would definitely trade for T. Higgins. Yeah, here.
Yes.
I would gladly get rid of Beasley and Gaskin for T. Higgins
Yes.
in any format, dynasty or redraft.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm jumping all over that.
Smash.
Trade or smash accept if it's been offered to you. So either way. Let's see. Let's get to number 7 here. This is back to you, Evan. What do you got at number 7?
So I am going to go to Carson Wentz and Pittman, kind of guys we already talked about with a couple questions in the chat. But yeah, I like the 2 Colts here this week. Carson Wentz and Michael Pittman both have been playing really good football as of late, like I said earlier. Wentz has been more productive over the last 3 weeks. He scored 20-plus points twice. He's thrown 7 touchdowns with no interceptions. And well, I mean, in that game last week, in that rain game, he was close to a couple, but at the end of the day, he still has 0 interceptions. And he now goes up against a Titans defense who has given up 21-plus fantasy points to 4 different quarterbacks this year. Even though, I'm sorry, Mike, they didn't give up any touchdowns to your boy Patrick Mahomes, which I have no clue. Anyway, I don't get how Patrick Mahomes-led offense doesn't score a touchdown on him. But
so, Evan, we actually talked about this right before you came on. That's the first time ever since Mahomes has been starter that the team has not scored an offensive touchdown.
Yeah, and I think that was more of the Chiefs kind of being out of sorts with their defense situation and everything's going on with that team. Then that was the Titans all of a sudden being a good defense.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. And then we get Pittman, who I really like as well. So I'm actually going to be going to this Wentz to Pittman stacks and large field GPPs for DFS purposes. Anyone wants to follow along with that stack. Pittman has finally been coming around and becoming the player that, we kind of all thought he would be coming into the year. He has a 26% target share since week 2. He's had 20 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. And once again, he gets a bad Titans defense. I repeat, a bad Titans defense. Do not go off of what you saw last week. They've allowed the 2nd most receptions, the 2nd most receiving yards, and the 2nd most fantasy points to wideouts this year. So I think you can get Pittman in the lineups. Absolutely get Pittman in the lineups. And if you need a QB streamer or, you're in a 2 QB league, super flex league, you can look to Wentz and feel okay about it.
Yeah, Carson Wentz, despite throwing one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen last week, had a good game, came through in that game down the stretch. But that was why I know it was wet, but man, I don't know what he was thinking there.
Yeah, the little flip
in the rain.
Yeah.
Wow, that was great. That was funny, but I had a good laugh on that one. But that was one of the worst I've ever seen. But man, he's getting it done, despite. I've had doubts in Carson. He's an adventure. I'll put it that way back there. He's definitely a little bit of an adventure, but for fantasy purposes this year, he's certainly performing. And we've seen Pittman come out. We've already talked about that a little bit tonight, so I don't mind that stack this week for sure. And yeah, that could be a little bit of smoke and mirrors there. That Titans last week, that might be a throwaway. Just I don't know what happened in that game. The Chiefs were terrible. And they might revert back to their normal secondary situation where you can exploit them with your wide receivers. But any last thoughts mostly on the Chiefs there, Mike? Do you want to defend your team a little bit or no? Okay, we'll move.
This is a get right game against the Giants. That's all I'm going to say.
Get right, Chiefs. Get well soon. Let's throw it to you, Mike. You've got some interesting stats for us here with topic number 8.
Yeah. So I was originally going to bring up Allen Robinson and why you should maybe drop him. However, in that research, I found some stuff about the Bears offense in general that might prove why you should, but also just shows you about this offense running and passing, about why players are doing well on this team and not doing so well. So I'm going to start last year. So in 2020, the Bears threw the ball 61% of the time, which was sixth highest in the league. They had they were 16th in plays per game overall. And they only ran the ball 39% of the time, which was 26th in the league. However, this year, they are 30th in overall plays per game. The only two teams that have ran less plays per game this year are the Texans and the Seahawks. They are passing the ball only 47% of the time. So last year, they passed the ball 61%. This year, they're only passing 47% of the time. The only team that is lower than that is the Saints. And then they're running the ball 53% of the time, and the Saints are the only team higher with 54.7%. So, yes, a game plan for sure, because one of the only reasons that I think the running backs are having such a good season this year in Chicago, because we know Monty was doing well before he got hurt. Herbert has been doing decent, and Damian Williams did good the one game before he got COVID. When you're running the ball 53% of the time compared to 47% passing, and that's second in the league in run rate compared to last year where you were 26th in run rate, to me, it's all about game plan this year. And honestly, that's another reason I think Matt Nagy needs to be bye-bye.
Yeah, I think this might be Matt Nagy's swan song for sure. I agree on everything with the Bears. Their offense, don't like it. Stay away. Running game, you can get a little bit out of there, but man, that passing game is rough right now. Hopefully, better days to come, but it might not be till next year. Evan, any other thoughts on the Bears there?
No, I mean, we could have a whole podcast on the Chicago Bears and that whole situation and how, Matt Nagy is just not putting the young quarterback in the right situation. But a lot of it, while it's on Matt Nagy, a lot of it has been on Fields too. Fields just doesn't look, it looks like the game's too fast. Yeah, it looks like the game's too fast for him at this point. But yeah, I mean, no, like I said, we could go on for forever on that topic. And then to the Carson Wentz point, I was looking back at the box score because I was like, I swear when I was looking at the numbers, I didn't see any interceptions over the last 3 weeks.
Oh, they called that a fumble.
Yeah, they didn't.
I forgot.
Yeah, I was like, wait, did I miss something? I was like,
I remember now. They did that during the broadcast.
They scored a fumble.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just making sure I wasn't going crazy.
That is true. It's a one of the worst fumbles I've ever seen. I've ever seen.
Yeah,
if it doesn't hit the ground and it's a quarterback, it should be considered an interception.
Yeah, I mean, he was. Whatever it was bad.
And he should have had in that wet game, dude. He threw a couple balls in that game that should have been picked, but in those conditions, the DBs just couldn't brawl him in. Yeah.
Yeah, the conditions were real rough in that game. Let me throw it to a couple things in the chat here. Kyle with an interesting question here. This is getting to depths of a roster. This is 12-team PPR. Start 2 of these players. Nico Collins, Dante Pettis, Chuba Hubbard, David Johnson, Devin Singletary. Man, that's for me, I think just off the top of my head, I'm rolling Chuba out there one more time, starting running back, and I'd probably roll out David Johnson with Mark Ingram gone, maybe. I don't know, swing at that or something. I don't know. I don't really like any of the other guys. Maybe Singletary, but what do you guys get?
I'm definitely going Chuba. I mean, out of that group, you have to take.
Yeah, that's the one standout.
We're all on agreement on Chuba.
And then you're gonna kind of see how that Giants receiver squad, how they look with the health.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah, but it is Monday night, so I would go Hubbard and Devin Singletary. I like the Bills backs this week.
Mike, you're shaking your head. Singletary.
I'm on Evan. I'm on Evans.
I'm fine. Yeah, they kill Miami usually.
That Houston backfield. I
know it's gross. Yeah. I think I would stick with. I think I'll go with that. I'll switch. Singletary, Chuba's the clear winner there
Yeah,
out
for
of
sure.
guys you can trust. And Pettis has played well, but it's just I don't know how many guys are going to be healthy on that team. You could have guys back, or I'm not sure. And it's a Monday night game, so it's a little tough.
But that's
One other,
definitely a deep league that Kyle's in.
yeah,
Yes.
I don't like the decisions you have to make there.
I'm in a few leagues like that.
Yeah, some injuries probably piling up, or maybe you got some Raiders and Ravens on your team. But this one, I'm gonna let you guys handle this because I love Javonte Williams too much to answer this question. But trade Javonte Williams for Damian Harris, 12-team PPR.
Well,
Evan, I'll throw it to you.
Evan, go.
In Dynasty, hell no, keep Javonte Williams. But obviously in redraft,
I think this is a redraft question. I'm gonna
in
guess.
redraft. Oh my gosh, this is hard, man, because I really like Javonte, but I just don't know if they're ever going to hand the reins over to him. But I think I would still hold out on Javonte. I just think it's going to come where they're going to give it to the young man. He's going to take over, and we're going to see why we've all been touting him. But yeah, because like you said earlier, Jay, Damian Harris is a little game script, and I just can't trust these New England running backs.
Yeah, that would be the only reason why I might just stick with the upside of Williams is that Harris, it's the right games. Like you'll know, like if it's like Jets, which he's done it against, it's like, oh, obviously Harris is going to have a good game here. But there's some other ones they might get into where it's like, I don't know, Patriots running game can go a different direction and he doesn't get as many carries. And he's a guy who needs to get carries and get in the end zone. But like I said, I love Javonte so much that I almost have to just, rescind myself from that conversation. But anyways, let's move on to this is my topic. So we're rounding out the 9 before we get into our cheat of the week. And we'll do this one pretty quick. Elijah Mitchell, I just wanted to kind of talk about him. This was a guy who's established himself since coming back from that injury as the guy on that team, at least from a first and second down perspective. He's getting well over 60% of the snap share now. Probably hovering around 65% overall the last couple of weeks. He's had 200-yard efforts this year. He's at about 4.7 yards per carry, and he's scoring fantasy points for you. Had a great game last week, around 18 fantasy points. Had a touchdown in that game. And we like that running game. We always talk about that. That's why we like Trey Sermon going to that team. We liked Raheem Mostert potentially as kind of a sleeper, good value. Injury happened there. They don't like Trey Sermon's clearly. It's clearly like Mitchell's team, although they are bringing Hasty in from a pass down perspective. He seems to be the guy that they're playing on third downs there. So my question for him is running back so scarce. I like him this week. I think he's a good play. But if you're in a PPR situation or a redraft situation or even dynasty, is he a guy that you're going out and trying to trade for to help you win? Or is he a guy where you're like, man, his value couldn't get any higher. He's established himself here. Let me get out from under that and maybe find something else that you believe in a little bit more. So that's kind of my question on him. I like him as a start going forward, but are you looking for something more? Do you think you could kind of sell him? Or do you think he's a guy that you actually want to keep on your team? I'll throw it to you, Evan. Are you buying Elijah Mitchell or selling him?
I think in redraft, I'd be actually trying to buy him. But it's hard to in Dynasty. I'm kind of torn because I don't know. Like he's obviously the clear cut running back in this backfield, but we know in this Niners backfield that can change at any given point. Kyle Shanahan will, just kind of, I like this guy. I'm going to roll him out and give him the ball 18 times this week. So maybe in Dynasty, I'm not so quick to buy. But in redraft, I think for the rest of the season, he is clearly the running back to own in this backfield. So I'm buying him in redraft.
Mike, buy or sell Elijah Mitchell?
Redraft, I would maybe see what's out there, but honestly, in Dynasty, I'm selling because I think the value is high, and I'm not super high on him. So in redraft, I'd probably just stay pat or stay away. But in Dynasty, I would sell.
No, I think that makes sense. The Dynasty, the long term could be. We've seen multiple backs in there So this hasn't been a stable situation. So is it stay there going forward? I did kind of like him, so I have him on some teams. I like that it came, got something out of it this year, which
Yeah.
is nice. I'll talk about it a little bit more in my cheat of the week, where he's an interesting guy in terms of having him on your team going forward, or maybe trading for him. But we'll talk about him a little bit there. But let's get to our cheat of the week, number 10 of the week. This is where we give you a quick stat or gambling advice
Evan.
for our cheat of the week, and we'll kick it off with you, Evan. What's the play this week? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's just guess kind of has became my thing, so I'm just sticking with it. We had a tough beat last week, losing that Dolphins call. Man, they were in it, could have won. So I'm never mad at that when I lose a bet, in that fashion. At least I know I was on the right side because they had a chance. I definitely touted the Bengals though, and they came through big time. I was waiting for those DMs and those follows on Twitter so we could talk shop. This week though, my underdog pick is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the Browns straight up. Whether Baker plays, Case Keenum gets the nod again, I don't care. I think the Steelers can come out on top of this one. This is a huge.
Evan, I just want to bring one thing up. I did see Baker is starting.
Baker is starting. Yep, and that's fine because we don't know, is he going to be 100%? Either way, the Steelers can pull this one off. This is a huge rah-rah spot for Tomlin and the Steelers. Tomlin is just one of those coaches that, for whatever reason, he just knows how to get his players hyped for him. To the point they'll run through a freaking wall for the guy. They will go to war for Mike Tomlin. He's a player's coach. They love him in rah-rah spots. I love backing them. They're coming off a bye, so they've had plenty of time to prep for the Browns. And a couple stats to my point is Tomlin as a dog after week 3 is 36-15 into. That's 71% against the spread. He's also as a dog with an equal or better against a team with an equal or better win percentage is 28-7-1, 80% against the spread. I know I'm picking them to win straight up, but obviously I also love them against the spread as well. So to wrap things up, the Steelers can absolutely go into Cleveland, come away with a win. And like I said before, I'm also going to be, putting some money on the Vikings to upset my Cowboys because I just think, unfortunately, this is a letdown spot for my boys. But yeah, hit me up once again. Follow me on Twitter. Hit me up so we can talk shop because I also have a little underdog parlay that I'm playing this week that will pay out $1,633 off a $100 bet if it hits. So it's a good way to risk $100.
That sounds good. We'll be rooting for you there. Pittsburgh, I could definitely see them winning this game, so I like that. Mike, let's get to you. Your cheat of the week here for week 8.
So just like Evan has his cheat of the week and it's usually betting, mine is usually some weird stat that I find interesting on players. So my stat this week is leading running back targets per route, minimum 100 routes ran. So how many targets do running backs get per route? So it was kind of surprising. I'm going to go backwards. It's the top 9. Jonathan Taylor, 21% of the time. Jay's boy, Javonte Williams, 21% of the time. McKissick, 22. Chuba, 24. Najee and Kamara also at 24. DeAndre Swift at 25. Cordarrelle Patterson at 31. I did skip the second place guy, and the reason I skipped the second place guy is, to me, he's the most surprising on this list to me, and that is 26% of the time, Myles Gaskin. He is second in
your boy. Someone's boy, Evan's boy.
He was my boy. He was my boy preseason, and he is literally I wrote an article on him for GF2, and he is totally disappointed. But I will say that the other thing I want to bring up about your boy, Jay, and I was saving this for this, is I think 21% of the time for Javonte Williams proves that his breakout is coming sooner than later.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, I was very encouraged last week from the game. I just need a little bit more volume with Devontae, and
Yes.
I think, come on, just one of these games he's going to get more work and it's going to pay off. But man, I mean, he's producing in a situation where you're splitting or getting slightly less. It's pretty good. So,
And he's already ran 100 routes, at least 100 routes. I don't know what the number is, but this was minimum 100 routes, and he's only in a split.
yeah, it's when the guy can do it all. He's a 3-down back, so it'll be. I'm really excited for when he kind of gets a kind of a workhorse role there.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where he goes in drafts next year.
Yeah, for sure. Where I'm sure there'll be some hype coming for him next year, particularly if Melvin Gordon's not on that team anymore, which I would imagine he's not. But we'll see. I'll get to my cheat of the week here. I'm just talking about kind of just bye-week trade strategy. This is a concept I've done before, and it's very simple, and it's probably not new to a lot of folks, but it's acquiring players that have had their bye weeks already. It's something I like to do in redraft situations, particularly if my team's not performing very well. If I'm close to 500 and I'm battling for a playoff spot, every week counts. So you always have to remember that every win, like winning in week 8, could be the difference between you getting into the playoffs or not making the playoffs. And it's all about making the playoffs because you need to make it there in order to win the championship. So you got to make your best roster each week to try to win that week, because if you're not like 6-0, 7-0, 7-1 as we get through these weeks after week 8, those types of teams can kind of coast. They can take some chances where like you could lose a game and it's not a big deal, but other teams you need to figure out how to win. So you got to think about making trades where you might trade for a guy that's already had their bye, but give up a guy who has a bye later. So if we look at some of the running backs that have already had their bye weeks, those are Elijah Mitchell, who we already talked about. That's why he might be an interesting trade target, because he already had his bye week. But you also have some other even better ones. You have Zeke, you got James Robinson, you got Austin Eckler, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Najee Harris, you got some big guys there. Now you'd obviously have to give up something for them, but obviously all the other running backs have buys coming up. The big guys like DeAndre Swift or Derrick Henry or Nick Chubb for Cleveland. But that is the types of decisions you have to make, trying to figure out, could you flip a guy like say a Nick Chubb or Christian McCaffrey who's injured. Maybe a team could take on Christian McCaffrey that has a better record, and you could get some of these guys like a Najee Harris or something like that, maybe a little bit low, where you could maybe win some of these games in between, make it into the playoffs and go for it. I've done those things in the past, like I said, particularly in redraft leagues where you're just trying to put together the best starting lineup you can, and you have to make some decisions like that. So pay attention to those bye weeks, players that already had them, because you're gaining, you don't have to worry about their bye anymore, and that will help you that week. And try to figure out where you have your buys to make sure you don't lose a week because of bye weeks, if you can't afford to lose. So that is advice I like to give. So look for deals like that. Guys, any thoughts there? Last thought on any trade strategies around bye weeks that you've done before?
I mean, one trade I made this year, I actually picked somebody up while they were on their bye week because someone didn't want to deal with it, and it was Bipocalypse, and I was already in a heaping mess, and it was going to be a bad week anyway. So I went and grabbed, and it was Dynasty. So I went and grabbed James Robinson because I was 7-0 or 6-0 going into it. So I went and grabbed James Robinson for the stretch run. And I ended up, because of Bipocalypse, made it 7-0, even though I was projected to lose. So I came out 7-0 with James Robinson in a trade.
Nice, yeah. That's why if you have the good record, you could take those chances where you take on guys on buys and things like that. So it's like playing it depending on your team. Yep. Seeing which way you could play it. So that about wraps things up. We made it through our 10 cheats this week. I just want to throw this one up here. We're not really going to get into this because we're at the end of our episode, but in honor of Halloween, and happy Halloween to all of you who watch the show this week and are listening. But Power Rank, think about this question as you do your trick-or-treating or you take your kids trick-or-treating this year. power rank these guys: Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Ghostface, this guy from Scream, I guess, Candyman, and Jason. For me, real quick, Jason, because my name's Jason. He's number 1. Michael Myers, number 2. Candyman, number 3. Freddy Krueger, number 4. Ghostface, number 5. He's not like really a villain. He's a guy in a mask. So that would be my rankings. I don't know if you guys have any quick, while you give me your Twitter handles and your plugs, give me your power rankings here real fast and tell us where you could find, we could find you and where you're writing. Evan, you could go first.
So yeah, definitely. Thanks for tuning in. Continue, please, to tune in to the Fantasy Cheat Sheet every Friday at 8:30. We do much appreciate it. But yeah, you can find all my stuff at Going for Two. Also on the Sunday show with Gladys and Eric and Gerson, where we answer start sit questions, inactives, actives, the shit questions, all that good stuff. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at @ev_rit3. And as far as my power rankings go, Candyman, which is why I had shit on my mind, because I was thinking about Candyman and he scares the living shit out of me.
Number 1, all right.
is number 1. And then for me, it would be Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason, Ghostface.
Oh, there you go. What about you, Mike? I like those power rankings. Candyman, yeah, maybe Candyman should be 2, but I got to put Jason number 1. So, Mike, what do you got, and where can we find you?
All right, so my power rankings, I would have to go Freddy Krueger 1, Jason 2, Candyman 3, Michael Myers 4, and Ghostface 5. Yep. You can find me at Drop the Mic FF on Twitter. Hit me up, DM me if you have any questions. Also, DM me if you want DM me if you want a graphic or you have a suggestion on a graphic. I'm still trying to get better at those. And other than that, you can find me all my work at Going for Two, and I can't wait to see you guys next week in week 9.
Yeah, and that was definitely Ghostface, not good BMI, so definitely has to be ranked down the power rankings there.
I'm Jake. 4,740.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, it just didn't show up at the 40. You can have Jay Christensen. You can find me at JC_DFF, writing at Going for Two, doing the Brothers of Dynasty podcast with my 2 brothers. You can find that at Bros of Dynasty on Twitter for all that information there. For Mike, for Evan, we're wrapping things up this week. I'm Jay. Have a great Halloween. Have a great week 8. And thanks for everybody for joining us this week. It was a fun episode. Lots of stuff in the chat. And hit us all up on Twitter if you got any questions. And enjoy this weekend's games. And we'll check you out next week.